Let's just jump right in. We've all been there, right? A team just hits a wall, projects start dragging, the energy in the room just evaporates. And we always blame the usual stuff: motivation, maybe bad management, low morale. But what if the problem isn't in our heads at all? What if it's actually in our biology? What if we've been trying to solve a physics problem with a pep talk? Now, I know what you're thinking. Zombies. It sounds a little dramatic, but just stick with me for a second. This isn't about some horror movie. It's about a very, very real and incredibly costly thing that could be happening in your company right now. It's a concept called zombie labor. So, what exactly is zombie labor? This isn't just someone having an off day or feeling a little sluggish. We're talking about a measurable state. It's when a worker is physically there, they're at their desk, they're in the meeting, but their actual capacity to do useful work has cratered to below 30%. They're just going through the motions. The lights are on, but nobody's home. And here's why so many of us completely miss this. For, decades, we've been obsessed with the wrong thing: the utilization rate. We ask, how many hours are people logged on? Are they at their desks for 8 hours? The new way of thinking, the one that actually sees the zombies, focuses on the capacity rate. It asks a much smarter question: what's the quality of the work getting done in those hours? It's a huge shift from just counting hours to measuring actual output. So to really understand this idea of capacity, you have to do an audit of our biology. And this has nothing to do with employee satisfaction surveys or asking people their preferences. No, this is about digging into the hard, non-negotiable laws of physics that govern our energy. This quote: "This is really the heart of the whole thing. You cannot preference your way out of thermodynamics." It's just a brilliant and kind of brutal reminder that no amount of positive thinking or free snacks or great company culture can change the fundamental laws of energy. Our bodies are biological machines, and they have to follow the rules of thermodynamics, period. And that brings us to this tool called High-Octane. Now, this is not just another productivity app you download. It's described as a forensic instrument. Think of it like that. Its whole purpose is to prove with cold, hard data that a person's ability to work isn't a flat, constant line throughout the day. Nope. It's a variable, and it's always degrading over time, just like a battery drain. The really critical thing here is that this energy drain isn't some invisible mystery. High octane shows that there are 3 clear observable states. First, you got the green zone, optimal. This is where you're doing your best work, high quality stuff. Then you slip into the orange zone, degraded. You're still working, but you're less efficient, kind of just going through the motions. And finally, you hit the red zone, critical. And that right there is zombie labor. So what happens when we just ignore these states? When we tell people to push through past their biological limits? Well, we get misalignment. And that misalignment comes with some very real, very high costs. It creates this invisible debt that's secretly building up in your organization, just draining productivity and cash right from your bottom line. Let's break down what this debt is actually made of. First, you have ghost hours. That's all the time your team is spending in that zombie state. On a timesheet, it looks like work, but it's not. It's a ghost. Then there's temporal debt. This is the extra recovery time needed after someone totally burns out, what they call an emergency shutdown. And finally, my favorite, metabolic interest. What a great term. It's this idea that the problem compounds. Each burnout makes the next one happen faster and faster. And all this creates this nasty, vicious cycle they call the debt spiral. It works like this. A worker gets fatigued, they hit that critical red zone, and boom, an emergency shutdown. That shutdown adds to the temporal debt. Now, with more debt piled on, the worker gets tired even faster the next time, which leads to another shutdown, which adds even more debt. And you can see how this thing just spirals out of control until the whole system collapsed. Through all of this deep forensic analysis, the research uncovered a number, a hard biological ceiling that is, and I mean this, absolutely critical for anyone who manages other people to understand. That number is 6. 6 hours. And what happens after those 6 hours is frankly terrifying. The system doesn't just get a little tired, it enters what is called catastrophic failure. And get this, the model shows that the damage from pushing past this 6-hour wall isn't something you can just fix with a good night's sleep or a long weekend. It's permanent and it's irreversible. You are literally damaging a person's baseline capacity to work. Okay, so that's the problem. And yeah, it's a huge one. It sounds pretty bleak, but the point of all this isn't to just throw our hands up in the air. It's to find a real solution. And the fix isn't another motivational poster. It's temporal. It's all about scheduling work based on how our bodies actually work, not on wishful thinking. So what does that look like in the real world? It's a sprint-based approach. The data points to working in super focused 4-hour blocks. Notice that's well before you hit that scary 6-hour wall. You follow that sprint with a 2-hour rest period, and that's for full biological recovery. But here's the absolute key. You schedule that rest proactively. You rest before anyone even gets close to that critical red zone. And the results of scheduling this way, they're not just good, they're staggering. This proactive biology-first scheduling doesn't just help a little. According to the model, it prevents over 85% of those incredibly costly emergency shutdowns. It literally stops that debt spiral before it can even get started. Now, one thing I really appreciate about this whole model is that it's realistic. It's not some fantasy. It acknowledges what it calls the management gap. See, no system is ever going to be perfect. There's always going to be this 5 to 10% gap when you try to sync a perfect digital schedule with messy, unpredictable human beings. And that's not a failure. It's just the measurable, predictable cost of dealing with reality. So we've been talking about human productivity, team burnout, but here is where this whole thing takes a really fascinating turn. All of these lessons we're learning about managing human biological systems, well, it turns out they have profound, and I mean profound, implications for a totally different field, the safety and alignment of artificial intelligence. And it all boils down to this one really powerful question. Think about it. We have more than 200 years of data on industrial human labor, and we still get it so wrong that we're burning people out. So if we can't even get that right, how on earth can we possibly hope to align a superhuman AI, a system that is infinitely more complex and one for which we have basically zero real-world data? The High-Octane project actually gives us 3 principles that we can take directly from human burnout and apply to AI safety. First, temporal alignment. Some failures, like hitting that 6-hour wall, are permanent. You have to prevent them. You can't undo them. Second, environmental coupling. You can have a perfect AI, a perfect agent, but if you put it in a chaotic or broken environment, it will fail. And third, systemic cascades. One tiny isolated failure can trigger a domino effect that brings the entire system crashing down.